My own daughter stole everything from me, including my husband, and what I discovered will haunt me until my dying day. My name is Beatrice Thornfield, and at 82 years old, I thought I had experienced every kind of heartbreak life could offer. I was wrong. The deepest, most devastating betrayal came from the person I loved most in this world. My own flesh and blood, the daughter I raised with my bare hands after her father died when she was just 7 years old. Let me tell you this story exactly as it happened, because the world needs to know that evil doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it lives in your own home, sleeps in your guest room, and calls you Mom while plotting your destruction. I was 25 when my first husband died in a construction accident, leaving me alone with little Ophelia. I worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat, cleaning offices at night, working at a diner during the day, and taking in sewing on weekends. I never remarried, never even dated seriously, because every ounce of my energy went into giving that little girl the best life I could provide. I sacrificed everything for Ophelia. I wore the same 3 dresses for years so she could have new school clothes. I ate peanut butter sandwiches for dinner so she could have proper meals. I worked overtime every holiday so she could have presents under the Christmas tree. When she wanted to go to college, I took out loans against our tiny house in Portland, Oregon, mortgaging my future so she could have hers. And she was worth it, or so I thought. Ophelia grew up to be a beautiful, intelligent woman who married a successful accountant and gave me 2 precious grandchildren. She seemed grateful for everything I had done, always telling people what a wonderful mother I was, how I had sacrificed so much for her education and her future. When I turned 65, Ophelia surprised me by saying she thought I should find companionship in my golden years. She even helped me join a senior social group, where I met Cornelius Blackwood, a gentle widower who had lost his wife to cancer 2 years earlier. Cornelius was everything I had never dared to hope for: kind, financially stable, and genuinely interested in spending his remaining years with someone who understood loss and resilience. We married when I was 67, and for the first time in over 40 years, I felt truly happy. Cornelius moved into my house, the same little house I had nearly lost trying to pay for Ophelia's education, and we began what I thought would be our peaceful twilight years together. Ophelia was thrilled about the marriage, or so she seemed. She insisted that she and her family should move in with us to help take care of the house and spend more time together. Our house was large enough. Cornelius and I had added rooms over the years, and I was delighted at the prospect of having my daughter and grandchildren close by. "We're family, Mom," Ophelia would say, hugging me tight. "Family should stick together, especially as we get older." I thought I was the luckiest woman alive. I had a loving husband, my daughter living under the same roof, and my grandchildren running through the halls, filling the house with laughter and joy. After decades of struggle and loneliness, I finally had everything I had ever wanted. For 3 years, life seemed perfect. Cornelius and I took care of the finances together. Ophelia helped with household management, and we all shared the responsibilities of daily life. I trusted them both completely. Why wouldn't I? Cornelius was my husband, and Ophelia was my daughter, the child I raised to be honest, grateful, and loving. I was such a fool. The first sign that something was wrong came during a routine doctor's appointment last spring. I had gone in for my annual physical, and Dr. Martinez mentioned that my insurance had been changed recently. I was confused because Cornelius and I hadn't discussed changing anything, but I assumed he had found a better plan and simply forgotten to mention it. When I got home, I asked Cornelius about the insurance change. He looked genuinely surprised and said he hadn't changed anything. That's when we decided to look into our financial accounts more carefully, something we hadn't done in months because we trusted Ophelia to help manage the household expenses. What we found made my blood run cold. There were withdrawals from our accounts that neither of us had authorized, large sums of money taken out regularly over the past 6 months. When we looked more closely, we found forged signatures on bank documents, insurance changes that we had never requested, and even applications for credit cards in my name that I had never seen. Someone had been systematically stealing from us, and the signatures on all the documents looked suspiciously like Ophelia's handwriting, trying to mimic mine. Cornelius wanted to confront her immediately, but I begged him to wait. I couldn't believe my own daughter would steal from me. There had to be an explanation. Maybe someone had stolen her identity too. Maybe we were both victims of some elaborate scam. But deep in my heart, I knew the truth. I just wasn't ready to face it. The confrontation came sooner than I expected, and in a way that shattered not just my trust, but my entire understanding of the people I loved most in this world. It was a Tuesday afternoon in June. I had gone to my doctor's appointment and returned home earlier than I expected because the appointment had been rescheduled. As I walked through the front door, I heard voices coming from the living room. Intimate voices, familiar voices, saying things that made my world collapse around me. What I witnessed next would destroy everything I thought I knew about love, family, and betrayal. I stood frozen in my own hallway, listening to my daughter's voice drifting from the living room, speaking in tones I had never heard her use before. Soft, seductive, intimate. The words that followed made my knees buckle. "When are we going to tell her, Cornelius? I'm tired of pretending to be the grateful daughter while you're pretending to be the devoted husband. We've been planning this for 3 years. It's time." My husband's voice responded, equally intimate, equally devastating. "Soon, my love. We just need to get the rest of the paperwork in order. Once we have her declared incompetent, everything will be ours. The house, the savings, everything she's worked for her entire life." I pressed my back against the wall, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure they could hear it. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. My daughter, my precious Olia, and my husband, Cornelius, plotting against me like I was some kind of obstacle to be removed? "I still can't believe how easy this has been," Olia continued, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "She trusts us so completely. She signs whatever I put in front of her, never questions the bank statements I show her, never suspects that we've been draining her accounts for months." "Your plan was brilliant," Cornelius said, and I heard the sound of kissing that made me want to vomit. "Convincing her to marry me, moving us all in here together, making her think this was all her idea. She handed us everything on a silver platter." The plan. They were talking about a plan. This wasn't a recent affair or a moment of weakness. This was a calculated, long-term scheme to destroy my life, and I had been the perfect victim. I forced myself to move closer to the doorway, needing to see with my own eyes what my ears were telling me. Through the crack in the door, I watched my 60-year-old daughter sitting on the lap of my 75-year-old husband, both of them partially undressed, both of them laughing about how easily they had fooled me. "The best part," Olia said, running her fingers through Cornelius's gray hair, "is that she actually thinks you love her. She has no idea that I found you specifically for this job, that I researched lonely widowers and senior groups until I found the perfect mark." My legs gave out, and I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor of my own hallway, listening to my daughter describe how she had orchestrated my entire marriage as part of an elaborate con game. She was so desperate for companionship after all those years alone. When you approached me at that senior center and explained your plan, I thought it was too good to be true. A lonely old woman with a house, savings, and no one to protect her except a daughter who was willing to help me take it all. They had met before. Before I ever laid eyes on Cornelius, before our chance meeting at the social group, before our courtship and marriage. It had all been planned. My daughter had recruited him specifically to marry me and steal everything I owned. The nursing home paperwork is almost ready, Olia continued. Dr. Peterson said he'll sign the mental incompetency forms as soon as we bring her in for the evaluation. Once she's declared unfit to manage her own affairs, we'll have full power of attorney and can do whatever we want with her assets. And she'll be safely tucked away where she can't interfere with our plans, Cornelius added. I have to admit, I'm impressed with how thorough you've been. The forged signatures, the fake medical records, the way you've been slowly isolating her from her old friends. It's all been perfectly executed. I realized then that my increasing isolation hadn't been natural aging or coincidence. Olia had been systematically cutting me off from my support system, making me more dependent on her and Cornelius, more vulnerable to their manipulation. The only thing that worries me is Mrs. Evangeline next door. She's been asking too many questions lately, wanting to know why Mom seems so confused and forgetful all the time. Mrs. Evangeline, my neighbor of 15 years, who had indeed been expressing concern about changes in my behavior, changes that I now realized were the result of the medications Olia had been giving me, claiming they were vitamins and supplements to help with my memory. Don't worry about the old busybody. Once Beatrice is in the nursing home, it won't matter what the neighbor thinks. We'll sell this house, liquidate all her assets, and disappear. Maybe take that trip to Europe we've been planning. They were going to drug me, have me declared mentally incompetent, steal everything I owned, and then abandon me in a nursing home while they lived off my life's work. The daughter I had sacrificed everything for, the child I had raised with love and devotion, was planning to destroy me. But what hurt most wasn't the money or even the betrayal. It was the realization that Olila had never loved me at all. Every hug, every "I love you, Mom," every moment of apparent gratitude and affection had been an act. She had been playing a role for 60 years, waiting for the perfect moment to cash in on all my sacrifices. I sat there on the floor of my hallway, listening to them plan my destruction, and felt something I had never experienced before in my 82 years of life: pure, burning rage. They thought they had the perfect victim. They thought I was just a lonely old woman, too trusting and too isolated to fight back. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. But first, I needed to find out exactly how deep this betrayal went and whether anyone else knew what they were planning to do to me. I managed to crawl back to the front door and slip outside without being detected, my mind reeling from what I had just witnessed. I sat in my car for over an hour, trying to process the magnitude of their betrayal. This wasn't just an affair or simple theft. This was a sophisticated plan to steal my entire life and have me locked away like a discarded piece of furniture. When I finally felt steady enough to think clearly, I drove straight to Mrs. Evangeline's house. My neighbor had always been sharp as a tack, and if she had been asking questions about my behavior, maybe she had noticed things that I had been too trusting to see. Mrs. Evangeline welcomed me with the concerned expression she had been wearing more frequently lately. At 90 years old, she was still sharp, independent, and fiercely protective of the neighbors she cared about. When I told her what I had discovered, her face went through a range of emotions before settling on grim determination. Then she shared something that made my blood run cold. For the past 6 months, Mrs. Evangeline had been documenting strange activities at my house. She had noticed Olila and Cornelius having intimate conversations in the garden when they thought I was napping.
She had seen them loading boxes into a storage unit, boxes that contained items from my house that I hadn't noticed were missing. Most disturbing of all, she had overheard phone conversations where Alila discussed managing the old woman and keeping her medicated and compliant. Mrs. Evangeline had been so concerned that she had started keeping a detailed journal of everything she witnessed, complete with dates, times, and photographs taken from her window. She showed me a notebook filled with evidence of their deception, evidence that proved this conspiracy had been going on far longer than I had imagined. The photographs were devastating. Pictures of Alila and Cornelius embracing passionately in my garden. Images of them loading my grandmother's antique furniture into a truck. Photos of Alila going through my personal papers while I was at doctor's appointments. Mrs. Evangeline had been building a case without even realizing it. But the most shocking revelation came when Mrs. Evangeline told me about the other victims. Through her network of elderly friends and neighbors, she had learned about 3 other women in our community who had experienced similar situations in recent years. Elderly women who had suddenly become confused and forgetful, who had been moved to nursing homes by caring family members, and whose assets had mysteriously disappeared shortly afterward. The pattern was always the same. A trusted family member would introduce a new romantic partner into the elderly person's life. The couple would move in to help with daily care. The elderly person would begin showing signs of mental decline. Medical professionals would recommend institutional care, and then the family would gain control of all assets while the elderly person disappeared into the healthcare system. Mrs. Evangeline suspected that Alila and Cornelius were part of a larger network targeting vulnerable seniors throughout Portland. The medications they had been giving me weren't just to make me compliant. They were designed to create symptoms that would support a diagnosis of dementia or mental incompetence. Armed with this information, I knew I had to act quickly. If they were planning to have me evaluated for mental incompetency soon, I needed to gather evidence and build my own case before they could execute their plan. Mrs. Evangeline and I spent the next week working together like detectives. While Alila and Cornelius thought I was taking my usual afternoon naps, I was actually at Mrs. Evangeline's house, going through financial records, copying documents, and building a comprehensive picture of their theft. The scope of their crimes was staggering. Over the past 3 years, they had stolen over $200,000 from my accounts. They had sold family heirlooms and pocketed the money. They had taken out loans against my house without my knowledge. They had even been collecting rent from tenants in a property that I didn't know I owned, a property that Cornelius had purchased in my name using forged documents. But the most heartbreaking discovery was a series of emails between Alila and someone named Marcus, who appeared to be coordinating these elder abuse schemes across multiple cities. The emails revealed that Alila wasn't my first victim. She had been running similar cons for over a decade, targeting elderly people who trusted her, stealing their assets, and then moving on to the next victim. My own daughter was a professional predator who specialized in exploiting the elderly. The loving, grateful child I had raised was actually a criminal who had been using me as her latest mark.
The emails also revealed their timeline. They planned to have me committed within the next 2 weeks. Dr. Peterson, who I now realize was part of their network, would declare me mentally incompetent based on fabricated symptoms caused by the drugs they had been giving me. Once I was institutionalized, they would have complete control over my assets and could liquidate everything without interference. Reading those emails, seeing my life reduced to dollar amounts and profit margins in my daughter's correspondence with her criminal associates was almost more than I could bear. But it also gave me the evidence I needed to fight back. Mrs. Evangeline helped me contact a lawyer who specialized in elder abuse cases. Attorney Sarah Mitchell had seen cases like mine before and knew exactly how to build a criminal case against Aaliyah and Cornelius. She also connected me with Detective Rodriguez,
who had been investigating similar crimes in the Portland area. As we prepared our case, I realized that I had one advantage my daughter hadn't counted on. She thought I was a helpless old woman, too drugged and confused to understand what was happening to me. She had no idea that I was building a case that would not only stop her from destroying my life, but would also protect other elderly people from becoming her future victims. The time had come to turn the tables on the people who thought they could steal my life and throw me away like garbage. But what happened when I finally confronted them would shock everyone involved and expose the true depth of their criminal enterprise. You know, sharing this story with all of you reminds me how important it is to stay connected with our communities. Whether you're watching this from your home in Florida, your apartment in New York, or anywhere else across this great country, please remember to check on your elderly neighbors and family members. If this story is resonating with you, I'd be so grateful if you could hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps me continue sharing these important stories that we all need to hear. The plan we devised was both simple and devastating. Instead of confronting Aaliyah and Cornelius privately, where they could deny everything or destroy evidence, we decided to expose them publicly, in front of witnesses who could testify to their crimes. I invited my grandchildren, Aaliyah's 2 teenage kids, for what I told everyone would be a special family dinner to celebrate our upcoming 4th wedding anniversary. I also invited Mrs. Evangeline, claiming I wanted to thank her for being such a wonderful neighbor. What Aaliyah and Cornelius didn't know was that Detective Rodriguez would be positioned outside, ready to move in once we had recorded their confessions. Attorney Mitchell had equipped me with a small recording device, and Mrs. Evangeline had agreed to secretly film everything from her position at the dinner table. We needed clear evidence of their admissions before the police could make arrests. The week leading up to the dinner was the most difficult of my life. I had to continue pretending to be the confused, medicated old woman they thought I was, while secretly preparing to destroy the people I had loved most in the world. Every time Aaliyah hugged me or called me Mom, every time Cornelius kissed my cheek and asked about my day, I felt sick, knowing it was all an elaborate performance. The hardest part was watching my grandchildren, 16-year-old Emma and 14-year-old James, interact with their mother and step-grandfather. These innocent kids had no idea that their mother was a criminal who was planning to abandon their grandmother in a nursing home after stealing everything she owned. On the night of the dinner, I cooked all of Aaliyah's favorite dishes, just as I had done countless times throughout her life. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was preparing what might be our last meal together as a family, knowing that by the end of the evening, she would be in police custody. Everyone gathered around the dining room table that had been in my family for 3 generations. The same table where I had helped Aaliyah with her homework as a child, where we had celebrated her graduation from college, where I had announced my engagement to Cornelius. Now, it would be the setting for the most devastating confrontation of my life. As we ate, I listened to Aaliyah and Cornelius play their roles perfectly. They asked about my health, expressed concern about my memory, and made subtle comments about how I seemed to be declining mentally. They were building their case right in front of the grandchildren, preparing them for the day when Grandma would need to be taken care of in a special facility. When we finished the main course, I stood up to address the table. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. Family is so important, isn't it? The people we trust most, the ones we count on to protect us and care for us when we're vulnerable. Aaliyah smiled warmly. Of course, Mom, we're all here for you. Always. That's interesting, Aaliyah, because I've learned some fascinating things about how you've been here for me over the past 3 years. The smile faltered slightly on her face, but she maintained her composure. What do you mean, Mom?
Drugging me with medications designed to make me appear mentally incompetent. I mean that you recruited Cornelius specifically to marry me as part of an elaborate con game to steal everything I own. The silence around the table was deafening. Emma and James looked confused and frightened. Mrs. Evangeline sat quietly, her hidden camera recording everything. Oilia and Cornelius exchanged panicked glances. "Mom, you're confused," Oilia said, her voice taking on the patronizing tone she used when she thought I was having a bad day. "These medications you're taking are affecting your thinking. You're imagining things that aren't real." But I was ready for that response. I pulled out my phone and played one of the recordings Mrs. Evangeline had made of their conversations in the garden. Their own voices filled the room, discussing their plans to have me committed and liquidate my assets. The color drained from both their faces as they heard themselves plotting my destruction in their own words. "Grandma, what's happening?" Emma asked, tears starting to form in her eyes. "Mom, what are they talking about?" Oilia tried to maintain control, but I could see the desperation creeping into her expression. "Emma, honey, Grandma is very sick. She's been having delusions, making up stories. We've been trying to help her, but she needs professional care." "Professional care?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "The nursing home where you plan to dump me after stealing everything I worked for my entire life? The same nursing home where you've sent at least 3 other elderly victims after running the same con on them?" That's when Cornelius finally spoke, his voice shaking. "Beatrice, please, let's discuss this privately. The children don't need to hear this." "The children absolutely need to hear this," I replied firmly. "They need to know what kind of people their mother and step-grandfather really are. They need to understand that the grandmother they've been told is losing her mind has actually been the victim of a criminal conspiracy." I turned to my grandchildren, my heart breaking for the pain I was about to cause them. "Emma, James, I need you to know that everything your mother has told you about my mental health has been a lie. The confusion, the forgetfulness, the strange behavior, it was all caused by drugs they've been giving me without my knowledge." Oilia stood up abruptly, knocking over her wineglass. "That's enough, Mom. You're having an episode. Cornelius, help me get her to her room. She needs her medication." But I remained seated, looking directly at my daughter. "The only episode I'm having is a moment of perfect clarity. For the first time in 3 years, I can see exactly who you are, Oilia. And what I see is a stranger who has been using my love against me." That's when everything exploded, and the truth came pouring out in ways that would change our family forever. Oilia's mask finally slipped completely. The loving, concerned daughter disappeared, replaced by someone I didn't recognize, cold, calculating, and filled with a rage that took my breath away. "You want the truth, Mother?" she snarled, her voice dripping with venom. "Fine, let's talk about truth. The truth is that I'd hated you my entire life. Do you know what it was like growing up with a mother who was so pathetically grateful for everything? So humble, so self-sacrificing, so determined to make everyone else comfortable while she suffered in silence?" Emma and James sat frozen, watching their mother transform before their eyes into someone they had never seen before. "I was embarrassed by you," Oilia continued, pacing around the table like a caged animal. "Your second-hand clothes, your multiple jobs, your constant apologizing for not being able to afford things.
Other kids had mothers who were confident, successful, put together. I had a mother who cleaned toilets and served coffee to make ends meet. The cruelty in her voice was like physical blows. This was my daughter, the child I had worked myself to exhaustion to support, telling me that my sacrifices had been not just unappreciated, but despised. When I got older and realized how much money you had saved over the years, how much this house was worth, how much you had scrolled away in retirement accounts, I felt cheated. All those years of poverty, all those times you said we couldn't afford things, and you were sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars? That money was for emergencies, for your education, for our future security.
Our future security? Oilia laughed bitterly. You mean your future security. You were planning to live forever, weren't you? Just sitting on all that money while I struggled to pay my bills, while I worked my ass off to give my kids the life you never gave me. Cornelius tried to calm her down, but she was beyond reason now. Years of resentment and hatred were pouring out of her like poison from a wound. So yes, I planned this. I planned all of it. I found Cornelius. I researched elder abuse tactics. I learned how to forge signatures and manipulate bank accounts. I studied you like a science project, figuring out exactly how to make you trust me completely while I destroyed you systematically. But I'm your mother, I whispered, still unable to fully comprehend the depth of her hatred. You're an obstacle, she replied coldly. You're an old woman who's lived long enough and has accumulated enough wealth that should rightfully belong to the next generation. I did the research, Mom. Most people your age are dead or in nursing homes. You're taking up space and resources that should be mine. Emma suddenly stood up, tears streaming down her face. Mom, stop. This is Grandma. She loves you. She's always loved you. Love? Olia turned on her own daughter with the same venom she had directed at me. What has her love ever gotten me? A childhood of poverty? A mother who was too weak to demand better for herself or her family? A lifetime of watching other people succeed while we scraped by on her pathetic sacrifices? That's when James, my quiet 14-year-old grandson, spoke up with a maturity that broke my heart. Grandma sacrificed everything so you could go to college, Mom. She worked 3 jobs so you could have a better life. How can you hate her for loving you? Oilia's face twisted with rage as she turned on her own children. You don't understand anything. You're just kids. You don't know what it's like to have a mother who makes you feel guilty for wanting anything, who martyrs herself so completely that you can never be good enough, never be grateful enough, never be worthy of all her precious sacrifices. The room fell silent, except for the sound of Emma's quiet sobbing. Mrs. Evangeline sat perfectly still, her hidden camera capturing every word of Oilia's confession. Cornelius finally found his voice, but instead of trying to defend their actions, he threw Oilia under the bus completely. This was all her idea. She approached me. She planned everything. I just went along with it because she promised me half of everything. I never meant for it to go this far. Shut up, you coward, Oilia screamed at him. You were happy enough to take the money and sleep in her bed while we planned her destruction. That's when I stood up and walked to the front door. I opened it wide, and Detective Rodriguez stepped inside with 2 uniformed officers behind him. Oilia Thornfield and Cornelius Blackwood, you're under arrest for elder abuse, fraud, theft, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes against a vulnerable adult. As they read them their rights and placed them in handcuffs, Oilia looked at me with pure hatred in her eyes. I hope you're happy, Mother. You've destroyed your own family to protect money that you'll never live long enough to spend anyway. I didn't destroy this family, Oilia. You did that the moment you decided that my love was worth less than my bank account.
After they were taken away, I held my crying grandchildren while Mrs. Evangeline called their father to come pick them up. Emma and James would need therapy to process what they had witnessed, but at least they were safe from their mother's manipulation now. In the weeks that followed, the investigation revealed the full scope of Oilia and Cornelius's crimes. They had victimized 7 elderly people across 3 states, stealing over $2 million in total. Several of their victims had died in nursing homes, alone and forgotten, while their assets were liquidated by the people they had trusted most. Oilia was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Cornelius received 12 years. The other members of their criminal network were arrested and prosecuted as well. As I'm sharing this story with you all today, I want you to know that surviving this betrayal taught me something important about the difference between love and enabling. Real love sometimes means protecting ourselves and others from people who would exploit our kindness, even when those people are our own family members. I'd love to hear your thoughts about family, forgiveness, and standing up for ourselves in the comments below. Have you ever had to make difficult choices to protect yourself from someone you loved? Did this story help you understand something about your own relationships? Please share your experiences. I read every comment with such care and appreciation. If you found strength or hope in my journey, please consider subscribing to this channel. Together, we're building a community of people who understand that our greatest betrayals can become our greatest sources of strength. Thank you for listening to my story and for being part of this healing journey with me.